Hello, Hidden Gems. If you saw my live the other night, I explained I was doing a bit of shopping and looking at some furniture after John told me I ought to slow down on my purchases. That's a true story. Well, I did go back yesterday and I bought the couch. But I am proud to say that John now sees my vision. We love having this cozier set and a place I can hopefully do some in person interviews. Let me know what you guys think. And to some big news. Since her arrest in 2023, the case of Kouri Richins has been nothing short of jaw-dropping. And if you've been following it, you know why. Her trial is finally set for February of 2026, but things just took a major turn. Now, originally, Kouri was facing 9 serious charges: aggravated murder, attempted homicide, mortgage fraud, forgery, a false insurance claim, you name it. Prosecutors say she poisoned her husband, Eric Richins, with a lethal dose of fentanyl on March 4th, 2022. He was just 39 years old. The alleged motive: money. Classic. And in a move that left pretty much everyone stunned, Kouri went on to write a children's book about grief. Yes, grief, for their 3 sons, and then went on tour promoting her book on local television. Well, just yesterday, on June 27th, 2025, the plot thickens yet again, and the case got even wilder. Kouri received a jaw-dropping 26 new charges. 26 new charges. We are talking 5 counts of felony mortgage fraud, 7 counts of felony money laundering, and a whole lot more. All of these, the state believes, tie to Eric's murder. And now her defense team is raising eyebrows about the timing of these new charges. And honestly, that's a fair question. But we have read the entire new 19-page charging documents, and it actually gives us some pretty revealing context, not just about these financial crimes, but about the murder itself. And if you are new to this case, do not worry, you're in the right place. I will link our full deep dive in the description of this episode. But today we are breaking down everything in this new filing and looking at how it could reshape the trial ahead. So let's get into it. After these new charges dropped, Kouri's defense attorneys, Kathy Nestor and Wendy Lewis, issued a statement, quote, "This sudden push to file new fraud charges over 2 years later underscores the weakness of the state's pending murder charges, since these fraud charges would not even come into play unless they fail to secure a conviction. The timing is also extremely troubling in light of the fact that the parties are trying to seat an impartial jury in Summit County," end quote. Well, it's ironic that they say the timing of these charges is quote unquote troubling, given what their client is accused of. The timing of many of Kouri's actions are what make Eric's death even more suspicious. But we will circle back to this statement from her defense attorneys in just a bit. Hold tight. The 19-page document begins by going over the new charges and then describes how these charges fit into the narrative of what the state believes took place back in 2022. First, we'll read what each charge says, and I will explain what it all means. The first are 5 new charges of second-degree felony mortgage fraud. These allegedly occurred on June 29th, August 2nd, August 12th, October 13th, and November 23rd of 2021. The charges state that in Summit County, Utah, Kouri, quote, "did with the intent to defraud, knowingly make any material misstatement, misrepresentation, or omission during the mortgage lending process, intending that it be relied upon by a mortgage lender, borrower, or any other party to the mortgage lending process. The value of the property, money, or thing obtained or sought to be obtained is or exceeds $5,000, end quote. So, in simple terms, Kouri intentionally provided false information or failed to disclose important details during the mortgage lending process, expecting that mortgage lenders, borrowers, or others involved would rely on her statements. The value of the property, money, or assets involved is $5,000 or more. So next are the 5 charges of forgery occurring on June 29th, August 2nd, August 12th, October 13th, and November 23rd of 2021. So the state claims that Kouri, quote, "did with the purpose to defraud someone, make, complete, execute, authenticate, or utter a writing so that the writing or the making, completion, execution, authentication, or utterance purports to be the act of another person, whether that person is existent or non-existent, end quote. So what does this mean? This means that with the intent to deceive, Kouri created, completed, signed, or presented documents that falsely claimed to be the work of another person, regardless of whether that person is existent or non-existent, meaning real, fake, dead, alive, just another person. There are 7 second and third degree felony charges of issuing a bad check from August 28th, October 12th, November 11th, November 12th, December 20th, and December 22nd of 2021. The state claims that Kouri, quote, did issue or pass a check for the payment of money for the purpose of obtaining from any person, firm, partnership, or corporation any money, property, or other thing of value, or paying for any services, wages, salaries, labor, or rent. The defendant knew the check would not be paid by the drawee. Payment was refused by the drawee, end quote. So this means that Kouri issued these checks knowing that she did not have the funds in her bank. There were 4 checks exceeding $1,500, but less than $5,000, and 3 checks exceeding $5,000, and they were all refused by the bank. I mean, talk about red flags. Next are 7 second-degree felony charges of money laundering from August 27th through the 28th, October 12th through 14th, November 10th through 16th, and December 23rd through 24th of 2021. So the state claims that Kouri, quote, did conduct a transaction knowing that the property involved in the transaction represents the proceeds of some form of unlawful activity with the intent to promote the unlawful activity, end quote. So, in other words, Kouri engaged in transactions and was aware that the property involved came from illegal activity and had the intention to support that illegal activity. The next charge is for second-degree felony communications fraud, and that says that on January 11th, 2022, Kouri, quote, did devise a scheme or artifice to defraud another or to obtain from another money by means of false or fraudulent pretenses, representations, promises, or material omissions, and communicated directly or indirectly with any persons by any means for the purpose of executing or concealing the scheme or artifice, end quote. This means that Kouri created a plan to deceive someone and gain money through false statements or promises while hiding important information that they needed. And she communicated with others in various ways to carry out or cover up this scheme. The value of what she obtained or aimed to obtain is $5,000 or more. And the last charge is for a pattern of unlawful activity, a second-degree felony. The state claims that on June 29th and March 3rd through the 4th, 2022, Kouri, quote, did commit prohibited conduct concerning a pattern of unlawful activity by receiving proceeds derived, whether directly or indirectly, from a pattern of unlawful activity in which the defendant has participated as a principal, end quote. Meaning, Kouri engaged in prohibited behavior by accepting funds that were obtained through illegal activities. And these activities involved a consistent pattern of unlawful actions in which Kouri played a key role as a main participant. The state also provided a lengthy probable cause statement to support the 26 new charges, as well as explain how they fit into the story of what took place leading up to and after Eric's death. Much of the statements include information covered in our deep dive. Again, that is linked in the description of this episode, but we will briefly go over what it says here, and then we will get into the new details. Kouri and Eric, they met in 2009 while Kouri was working as a cashier at Home Depot. Eric and his friend Cody, they owned a successful stone masonry business called C&E Masonry LLC. And Eric, well, he made frequent trips to Home Depot for supplies. And after falling in love, Kouri and Eric welcomed their first child together, a son, in 2012, and then married in 2013. Before the ceremony, the couple entered into a premarital agreement, or PMA, and in that PMA, Kouri agreed to relinquish all rights, claims, or interest to Eric's half of the C&E stonemasonry business. This meant that it would remain his sole property, and Kouri would have no right or claim to the business unless Eric died before Kouri. And while the two were still lawfully married, if they were lawfully married, then she would have no claim unless, again, Eric died before Kouri. So Eric passes away. Kouri would receive half of the business. And in early 2019, Kouri used a power of attorney to obtain a $250,000 home equity line of credit, or an HELOC, on Eric's premarital home without his knowledge. And on April 26, 2019, Kouri formed Kouri Richins Realty LLC and used the money from the HELOC to initially fund her new business. And after that, she used hard money loans to finance the ongoing business operations. Eric did not learn about the HELOC on his home until October of 2020, and this caused a serious source of tension in the marriage, obviously, since Kouri had been keeping this a secret. Huge tension in the marriage. Clearly, I think we can all understand why. And Kouri reportedly promised Eric that she would repay the loan and eventually led Eric to believe that she had, in fact, repaid it. However, in reality, the HELOC was not paid off a day of Eric's death. And on October 13th, 2020, Eric met with a lawyer. He told the lawyer that he wanted protection from ongoing abuse of his finances by Kouri. He also wanted to make sure their 3 sons were protected long-term by ensuring that Kouri would never be able to manage his property if he were to pass away. He's checking his boxes. On November 3rd, 2020, Eric executed several estate planning instruments, including a healthcare derivative, durable power of attorney, pour-over will, and a living trust. He put his sister, Katie Benson, in charge of all of these, intentionally excluding Kouri. He transferred his home and interest in the C&E business to the trust, and he removed Kouri as the beneficiary of his $500,000 life insurance policy. And like a classic story, Kouri was unaware of any of these changes until after Eric's death. In the 5 months before Eric's death, Kouri Richins Realty made $170,000 in revenue, but its monthly debt payments were more than $250,000. And so to cover the debt, the company borrowed money from over 25 lenders. Even though Kouri Richins Realty was already in debt and not making enough money, Kouri took out hard money loans to buy 3 more properties in November of 2021. A hard money loan is a short-term asset-based loan typically secured by real estate where the lender focuses on the property's value rather than the borrower's creditworthiness. And these loans are often used by real estate investors for quick access to capital and have a higher interest rate than traditional loans due to the risks. And these 3 properties, well, they added $1.1 million to Kouri's already overwhelming debt. By November 30th, she had already missed a payment on one loan and was behind on several others. She kept trying to borrow from new lenders with high interest rates to pay her existing debts. And by the end of 2021, Kouri was on the brink of a complete financial failure. On December 23rd, 2021, so 2 days before Christmas, Kouri signed a contract to purchase an unfinished mansion in Midway, Utah, using nearly $3 million in high interest loans, which would be due in 6 months. She did this knowing that she didn't have the money to pay off any additional debt or even begin renovating this property. I visited this property, by the way. It is massive, a massive undertaking. And regardless, she was scheduled to close on the mansion, which was also, get this, the day that Eric passed away. Kouri ultimately closed on this mansion the next day, raising her debt from $1.8 million to nearly $5 million. Kouri, her family, her business, and Eric's C&E business all banked with America First Credit Union. Kouri also had a checking account with Navy Federal Credit Union, which included a $15,000 line of credit. On July 7th, 2021, Kouri Richins Realty secured a mortgage loan from Iron Bridge Financial. So to support the loan application, Kouri submitted a fabricated or fake America First bank statement from May 31st, 2021, which showed an account balance of nearly $211,000. However, her actual bank statement from the same day had a balance of $15,610. So interestingly, C&E's America First statement from that day had a balance of $211,000. The transaction details on the false statement submitted by Kouri matched those on C&E's statement. Essentially, the purported statement combined the header of Kouri Richins Realty's genuine statement with the body of C&E's statement. And while processing the mortgage loan, an Iron Bridge representative wrote to Kouri, quote, When I ran your credit, it was lower than I expected. Looks like there are some delinquencies with regards to a few credit cards. I was just a bit surprised by that. I know you have a lot of money in the bank to cover expenses." End quote. Kouri responded, quote, "I recently learned about all of this as well, LOL. And then my husband tried to explain to me this was his doing a while ago. We are in the process of separation for one of many reasons, but this is one of them, to keep it short and sweet. LOL. It's been crazy, to say the least." End quote. There is no evidence to suggest that this statement from Kouri was true. And on August 4th, 2021, Kouri secured another mortgage loan from Boomerang Finance. To support the loan application, Kouri submitted yet another fabricated America First bank statement dated June 30th, 2021, which showed an account balance of nearly $703,000. In reality, her actual statement for that date showed a much lower balance of $15,000. However, C&E's America First statement from that date did have a balance of $703,000, meaning the transaction details on the false statement were identical to those found on C&E's statement. Kouri pulled the same ruse between August and October of 2021 while applying for another loan from Excel Financial Services. So when a representative asked for her to explain her low credit rating, this time Kouri said, quote, "A lady out of Seattle got a hold of my social security number," end quote. Again, there is no evidence that this statement was true. On August 28th, 2021, Kouri wrote a check from her Navy federal account to Kouri Richins Realty for the amount of $2,100. At that time, the balance in her Navy federal account was $0, and the line of credit showed a negative balance of $13,694. She then deposited this check into her Kouri Richins Realty's America First account, which had a balance of $9,139. And after the deposit, she transferred $2,500 from her America First account to her mother and $13,775 to various creditors before America First could withdraw the $2,100. So consequently, America First, they returned the check due to insufficient funds. Kouri, though, did the same thing with other checks several more times in October, November, and December of 2021. In late 2021, Kouri Richins Realty owned a property in Heber City, Utah, which was paid for by 4 short-term, high-interest, hard money loans totaling $456,500. 3 of these loans were set to mature in January of 2022. Starting in October of 2021, Kouri attempted, without success, to refinance the property into a conventional 30-year mortgage. Her intent was to then enter into a seller financing arrangement with her best friend. And the best friend, along with her husband and their 3 young children, moved into the home. Kouri and her friend signed a residential lease agreement with the option to purchase, under which the friend agreed to pay $2,900 per month in rent, with the option to buy the property for $490,000. On January 11th, 2022, the friend initiated 2 wire transfers totaling $45,000 to the Kouri Richins Realty bank account. Kouri had agreed to apply this money toward a down payment on a long-term mortgage that was scheduled to close on January 18th, 2022, right before the friend's wire transfers were deposited into the Kouri Richins Realty account. The balance in that account was around $2,000 or less. And after the first wire came in, Kouri moved the $19,299 from the friend's down payment into her personal America First bank account. She used that money to send a wire transfer for the same amount to a company called FundFi. The payment was for a high-interest loan Kouri had taken out and had nothing to do with the property for her friend. And by January 19th, 2022, Kouri had spent the rest of her best friend's $45,000 down payment on other expenses that were also unrelated to the property. That same day, the balance in the Kouri Richins Realty's bank account had dropped to $227. The planned refinance of the property for her friend did not happen that month, and on January 26th, Kouri had to sign an extension agreement with the largest of the 4 hard money lenders. In mid-February, the lender offering the 30-year mortgage canceled the original loan offer and instead proposed terms that were less affordable. As a result, Kouri had to sign another extension agreement with the same hard money lender on February 16th. And at that time, the remaining loan balance was $347,700. $715. The new agreement extended the due date to March 8th, 2022, just 4 days after Eric Richins passed away. And in the end, one of Kouri's lenders foreclosed on the home and evicted the best friend and her family. And on January 29th, 2022, Kouri applied for a life insurance policy on Eric through a company called True Stage. No red flags here. The policy was for $100,000 and listed Kouri as the beneficiary. It became active on February 4th, 2022, 10 days before Kouri allegedly attempted to take Eric's life and about 1 month before he had actually died. Yes, there was an attempt before his death. This attempt was when Kouri gave Eric a sandwich for Valentine's Day with a sweet little romantic note. And after eating the said sandwich, Eric told a friend that he broke out into hives and had to use his son's EpiPen. And after that, Eric fell asleep and thought that Kouri had tried to poison him. I mean, if that's not a red flag in a marriage, you think your wife is trying to poison you on Valentine's Day. And the monthly payments for the life insurance policy were taken from the K. Richins Realty account at America First, which Eric had no connection to. The application gave a mailing address for Eric that was actually a P.O. box used only by Kouri. The phone number listed for him also had a wrong digit. I don't think that was a typo. The signature on the application, which was supposed to be Eric's, turned out to be fake. You see a pattern? Now, Kouri periodically hired a man named Hayden Jeffs to help with renovating houses. And on January 20th, 2022, she texted him saying, quote, "I did want to chat with you about something super random. Not now, I kid stuff. I'll call you tomorrow if that works," end quote. And on January 22nd at 11:06 a.m., she texted, quote, "Got a sec?" According to what Jeffs told law enforcement, Kouri asked him for fentanyl. Yeah, fentanyl, claiming it was for a client with back pain. Jeffs said that he refused and that Kouri hung up on him. Later that same day, Kouri texted Jeffs again saying, quote, "Have another one for you. Call me if you get a second," end quote. Jeffs told law enforcement that this time Kouri asked for propofol, and he again said no. The messages between Kouri and Jeffs were later manually deleted from her phone. And after that day, they never spoke again, even though they had communicated regularly over the previous year. And on May 31st, 2022, about 3 weeks after Kouri was arrested for Eric's murder, Kouri's mother texted Kouri saying, quote, "Hayden is running his mouth," end quote, referring to Hayden Jeffs, the handyman, and their texts that they had exchanged. Unfortunately, Jeffs won't be able to be called as a witness during trial. He was actually tragically killed in November of 2024 in a motorcycle accident. And so prosecutors may have to rely on his previous statements to law enforcement and their phone records. And as most of us know, Kouri occasionally hired a woman named Carmen Lauber to clean houses as well. And according to Carmen, in early 2022, Kouri contacted her to ask for help getting fentanyl. A forensic review of Kouri's phone showed, get this, 746 text messages and 12 calls between her and Carmen from January 1st to March 15th, 2022. And all of these were manually deleted from Kouri's phone. Carmen told law enforcement that she reached out to another woman named Nicole Cummins to help her find someone with fentanyl. Nicole later confirmed that Carmen contacted her for this reason. So 2 witnesses corroborating that this actually happened. And on February 5th, 2022, Nicole gave Carmen the number of a fentanyl dealer named Robert. Carmen had met Robert at a Maverick gas station in the city of Draper on February 11th, 2022, and purchased 15 to 30 round light green blue pills, which she understood to be fentanyl. And during the same time, Carmen and Kouri were texting back and forth. Carmen then told law enforcement that she gave Kouri the pills on either February 11th or 12th. And on February 14th, again, that's Valentine's Day, Kouri placed a phone order at a Camas, Utah diner at 8:53 a.m. And at 9:41 a.m., Kouri texted her lover and other handyman, this is another handyman, Robert Grossman, quote, "headed that way," end quote. And at 9:49 a.m., she messaged him a screenshot of a map on her phone showing her current location in Camas and her projected arrival at an unknown destination at 10:49 a.m. Well, at 11:09 a.m., Eric made a 2-minute call to Kouri. And at 11:27 a.m., he sent her a photo. That photo has been deleted from both Kouri and Eric's phones. At 11:33 a.m., Eric texted Kouri, quote, "I'm going to go lay down for a bit. If I don't start getting better, I'm going to head to the hospital," end quote. Remember that Valentine's Day when he felt that Kouri had poisoned him? Well, 1 minute later, Kouri responded, quote, "Geez, it's that bad? Need me to come home? Go take a nap and call me when you're up," end quote. Activity did not resume on Eric's phone until nearly 2 hours later at 1:32 p.m. At 1:43 p.m., Eric texted Kouri, quote, "Are you home?" Kouri responded, quote, "No, I'm in Provo waiting for my cabinet installer guy. Are you home?" End quote. Well, 2 minutes later, then Eric responded, quote, "In the office, I've been sleeping out here," end quote. At 1:59, Eric called his friend and business partner, Kouri Wright. And Cody, he says he could hear fear in Eric's voice and could tell that he was scared. And at 2:11 p.m., Eric called another friend named Josh, who was struck by the tone of Eric's voice. Josh said that Eric seemed different, down, and somber. The document states that fentanyl can cause allergic and pseudo-allergic reactions, including hives. Eric Richins did not have any food allergies and told friends he used an EpiPen for hives that day and felt sick. Kouri and Carmen also exchanged 30 text messages that very day. And 3.5 months after Eric's death, Kouri texted her best friend about this whole incident. She wrote, quote, "It was Valentine's Day, and Eric and I were both working from home that day, and I ordered lunch from the diner. He never broke out in hives or used an EpiPen. I was fucking with him. He said the sandwich hurt his stomach, so he was going to take a nap. No hives, no EpiPen," end quote. But as we know, Kouri was not with him that day after he ate the sandwich. She was texting and going to see her lover, aka cabinet installer, aka handyman. And on August 22nd, 2023, nearly 4 months after Kouri was arrested for Eric's murder, Kouri told her mom and brother that she purchased sandwiches from the diner that day. Well, after this Valentine's Day incident, Carmen told law enforcement that in late February of 2022, Kouri asked her for stronger fentanyl and referred to it as that quote unquote Michael Jackson stuff. And what did Carmen do? Well, Carmen obtained more from the dealer, Robert, and gave it to Kouri on February 26th. At 3:21 a.m. on March 4th, 2022, Kouri called 911 and reported that Eric was cold, not breathing, and didn't have a pulse. 10 minutes later, EMS and sheriff's deputies arrived at the Richins home. They found Eric on the floor at the foot of his bed and performed life-saving measures, but he was ultimately declared dead at 4:58 a.m. One EMS personnel that night thought that Eric appeared to have been dead for a while, and Kouri told law enforcement that she and Eric had a drink together at 9 p.m. to celebrate something for her work. However, it's been previously reported that Eric was actually not happy about Kouri buying that mansion in Midway, that Midway mansion. Didn't want her to do it and wouldn't have been celebrating. A year later, Kouri told law enforcement that she made Moscow mules in the kitchen and brought them into their room for them to drink on the bed. But Kouri, well, she also wrote in a journal that she and Eric both went to the kitchen and started grabbing ingredients for the Moscow Mule and a lemon drop. She said that after their drink, they went back to their bedroom together and brushed their teeth. Well, a pathologist and the medical examiner's office performed an autopsy on Eric and concluded that his immediate cause of death was drug intoxication from illicit fentanyl, which had been orally ingested. His blood had approximately 5 times the lethal dose, and his gastric fluid contained additional fentanyl. Eric also had quetiapine, also known as Seroquel, in his gastric fluid, which is an antipsychotic medication used for the treatment of schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and major depressive disorder. It is also used as a sleep aid due to its sedating effects. And at the time of Eric's death, well, it wasn't Eric that had a prescription for this. Kouri had a prescription for quetiapine. And Kouri also told law enforcement that Eric ingested a THC gummy while she was fixing his drink that night. She said that she believed these gummies are what caused his death. However, the gummies had no traces of fentanyl found in them. And Kouri also told law enforcement that after she and Eric went to bed at around 9:30, she left shortly after to sleep in one of their son's rooms due to him having nightmares. And she claimed that she slept in there until around 3 a.m. And when she returned to their bedroom, she found Eric cold and not breathing. She immediately called 911, according to Kouri. She also claimed that she left her phone plugged in next to her bed and did not bring it with her to their son's room. However, though, forensic analysis showed that her phone was unlocked 6 times, actually, between 3:06 a.m. and 3:21 a.m. And during that time, well, the phone moved about 378 feet. Investigators also found that Kouri used multiple phones, including burner phones. That's nothing to see there. Her main phone had large amounts of data manually deleted, especially from January to mid-March of 2022. 3 days after law enforcement first informed Kouri that Eric died of a fentanyl overdose, she searched things like, quote, get these guys, you ready for these? What happens to deleted messages? Cause of death usually does not impact life insurance payment. How do police and forensic analysis recover deleted data from phones and signs of being under federal investigation? Can you delete everything off of an old iPhone without actually having it? Women, Utah prison. Can cops uncover deleted messages, iPhone? Can cops force you to do a lie detector test? If someone is poisoned, what does it go down on the death certificate as? How long does life insurance companies take to pay? And what is a lethal dose of fentanyl? End quote. Wow. On May 8th, 2023, Kouri was arrested for Eric's murder and received a copy of the charging document and probable cause statement. The probable cause statement referred to Carmen by her initial CL. On a jail call with her mother and brother, Kouri said, quote, Eric asked me to ask Carmen for pain pills, end quote. After Eric's death, Kouri submitted a claim for his life insurance policies on April 28th, 2022. And on June 7th, 2022, the company TrueStage learned that his cause of death was, well, drug intoxication from fentanyl. They asked Kouri to provide a copy of any prescription Eric had for this medication. Well, and Kouri informed TrueStage that the fentanyl was not prescribed and that she didn't have any idea how Eric obtained it. Switching stories once again, telling one person she asked Carmen for Eric, telling the life insurance she had no idea how he obtained it. The charging document concluded by saying, quote, the pattern of unlawful conduct is predicated upon the offenses charged in counts 1 through 25 above, and the herein uncharged insurance frauds, attempted aggravated murder, and attempted murder offenses, end quote. So a lot of this information, for those that have been following this case, was already known. But these details definitely bolster the state's money motive theory. I said that I would circle back to the defense team's statement after these charges were dropped yesterday. And here we are again, full circle. They said, quote, this sudden push to file new fraud charges over 2 years later underscores the weakness of the state's pending murder charges, since these fraud charges would not even come into play unless they fail to secure a conviction. The timing is also extremely troubling in light of the fact that the parties are trying to seat an impartial jury in Summit County, end quote. Well, if you recall, the judge in this case, Richard Mrazek, agreed to separate Kouri's financial charges from her murder trial. There seems to be a lot of evidence for the financial crimes, and it all certainly implies that Kouri will be in prison for a long time, regardless of the outcome of the murder trial. And in regard to the timing of the charges, I looked up each one in the state of Utah, and all but the money laundering charge have a statute of 3 years, which would be very soon. So I am not sure it has anything to do with the state having a weak murder case, but that Kouri broke the law, and it's the state's job to hold her responsible. In order to do that, it's now or never. But you'll have to let me know what you think. Do you think the state is just filing these extra charges because they don't feel confident that she will be found guilty of murder? I mean, it does definitely bolster the motive, again, as I said. Or do you think that they are just making sure they file every charge before time runs out? I'd love to know what you guys think in comments. May justice be served. Thinking of Eric Richins' family today. We'll see you.